The precise pop of the attic window latch was followed by pieces of metal bouncing across the attic floor. It might have been clearer this time, or he was too familiar with their process, but he could hear it move into the attic and quickly find its place to hide. Blakey glazed over with disgust and set aside the books. He rose and did some torso stretches as if he were going to lift a couch. He then finally unwrapped the object from his truck. Inside the towel was the trench club from his nightmare. Like the improvised weapons of the First World War, the threat of form was frightening, but it was made worse by its attention to craft. The metal monkey skull on top, adorned with a crown of barbed wire, gave the club a vaguely talismanic quality, making it impossible to determine which era it belonged to. Every time he unwrapped it, he gave his memory a chance to spark, but there was no memory of its origins. He found it in his garage some low day after. It had been in the wood scrap collection in the corner near the workbench. He could not even remember how long ago that was. Immediately suspicious, he became absurdly convinced someone had put it there for him. Eventually, he reasoned that it must have come with the house along with the rest of the wood. Both excuses were soft, and his mind never settled on the object, even though it was his most trusted charm. He kept it locked in his truck, wrapped in a beach towel, buried beneath hammers and saws and other hand tools, partly because it wasn't something the police would find favorably if he were pulled over, but mostly because it had become his Excalibur of sorts. He wanted to keep it safe because it was the only thing that worked in the maze he was trapped in. In the hall, he set the club down to push the dresser and desk away from the attic door. This revealed a heavy-duty, hastily installed latch and padlock for which he had no key, so he took his multi-tool out and unscrewed the latch. He then slowly turned the knob and let the door open towards him on its own as he braced for what might be inside. There was nothing, just unpainted attic steps leading up into the obscured dark. There was a light switch, but when he flipped it, it illuminated nothing. He waited a moment before starting the steps, his breathing already deepening. Testing the first stair for creaks when there were none, he proceeded up into the dark. This attic was another floor of the house, albeit unfinished. Dust thickened the tight beams of late-day sun cutting in from the window at the opposite end of the space. There were 2 light banks, but both were broken. The glass littered the raw plywood floor and crunched under his feet no matter his path. It had come through the window, but it was closed. He could see the broken lock from where he was standing. Ductwork snaked around archived possessions, a crib, toys, old clothes, heirlooms, and obsolete sports equipment. It was all dark spaces where something could hide. Blakey repeatedly clenched the club at his side, and every few steps he turned to check behind him. Their size shouldn't afford them this much concealment. He was certain they had some deal with the dark. He reached the attic's central structural support column, decided it was as good a space as any, and announced, "Best come out. Get it over with." There was never an answer, but he wanted it to know he wasn't fooled. It was there, hiding in the shadow behind a folded treadmill, but Blakey couldn't see it. He had named them shapes because they looked different from every angle, as if purposefully indescribable. Each was unique, but all had horrible, glinting eyes, pale, hairy flesh, and wiry, powerful limbs. Their overgrown animal jaws were filled with irregular gravestone teeth, which ground together in anticipation. He had once wondered whether that noise was a language or even a form of echolocation, but he had never encountered more than one at a time. Their behavior during a confrontation was also never the same. This one, like many but not all, rustled its heavy, long claws on the rows of mouldy cardboard boxes. It was the jittery animal sound that once haunted Blakey at night in excessive silence. There was a long pause of no movement, and Blakey realized it would not come out to meet him. Blakey slowly moved towards the light at the end of the attic, glanced out the window and turned back. That was when the shape peeked out, now behind the center pier. "There you are." His playful tone didn't assuage his fear. It was still well covered by shadow. Its eyes, two reflective bright points, implicated its head. This one twitched unnaturally and then lowered its head as if afraid. He knew it was a ruse and shook his head at the monster disappointedly. It then disappeared back into the dark, behind a dresser on the other side of the attic, in a blur of chilling speed. When Blakey took a few steps forward towards the dresser, the shape was suddenly behind him and rose to its full height. Blakey sensed it and turned with a full swing. The shape caught the club mid-air. Blakey looked up into its hollow predator's eyes, a good 10 inches above him, and offered a guilty smile that disappeared when the shape bared its teeth, a nightmare's smile. Blakey tugged at the club, trying to pry it free. The shape then bashed Blakey's face with his own weapon. Everything went blurry with the crunch of wood and a warm gush of blood. It was a fuzzy system shut down that he could taste in his mouth, and then darkness overcame him. Pain roused Blakey. The shape was biting into the fat of his back, delivering electric agony. Blakey screamed, twisted and kicked, doing little to free himself. It continued to gnaw, but he managed to hit it square in the nose with his fist. It reared back with a snort. Then Blakey kicked both legs into its body, sending it flying into a box of toys. Blakey fished madly for his club. The shape leapt back on Blakey in a frenzy, biting into his arm, crunching down on bone. Blakey howled, reached his club and brought it down on the shape's head with a satisfying squishy thud. Blakey crawled away in a throbbing daze under a heavy dining table in the corner, trying to gain a moment to stabilize his swimming head, but it wasn't in his control. The shape rose again, not needing recoup time, and came after him, tossing aside the table to get to Blakey, whose bearings returned just enough for a swing of his club. When it lunged for him, he ducked and caught it full on in the back of the head. There was a muffled snap of its skull, cracking. It fell to the ground, curled up, and rubbed its head frantically. Blakey rose and straightened. A wave of pain caused him to stagger back, almost losing his balance. That enraged him further, so he began pummeling the shape, putting his entire weight into every swing. Before the coup de grace, he growled, "That's right, fucker." Later, well after sunset, Blakey stood over his kill, the shape's lifeless body in the bed of his truck. It appeared so completely fabricated from imagination, he looked around for another witness to verify the flesh and bone, mauling phantasm he had bagged. At the next house over, a man in a business suit was getting his mail and nodded suspiciously at Blakey before heading back inside. Blakey felt no urge to call him over to show off the monster he had caught, but he did spurt out a goofy laugh at the absurdity of it all. The ache from his gnawed-up back and arm grew at the laugh. He covered the corpse with a painter's tarp, spat the collected blood from his mouth as his final word, and slammed the tailgate shut. Sliding into the driver's seat gave him a full shot of pain, and he could feel his shirt sticking to his back. Time to call the doc. He retrieved his phone and texted, "Hey, Doc, do you have time for a quick fix?" By the time he reached the ornamental front gate of the neighborhood, a reply dinged on his phone. "Hurry up. Only here for 30 minutes more." He replied, "Will do." He began to formulate possible explanations for the doc, but realized they were all bullshit. Maybe the first time it had worked, when the injury was more believable as a construction job accident, but after that it became an obvious lie. Blakey popped a bottle of water and drank most of it. The woozy feeling was building now. That unnatural poisoning he always suffered after being bitten. It had been a while, long enough that he had forgotten its power, and this was a deep bite. At the first stoplight, 2 children in the back seat of the SUV next to him turned in unison, drawn away from their headrest animated video to look at Blakey. The strange fascination on their faces made them look like 2 cherubs, observers sent from above to check on him. He wiggled his fingers at them, but they didn't react, looking concerned for his beaten face. The light turned green and there was an impatient honk for movement, so the SUV took the cherubs away. With the fresh sickness at the forefront of his mind, he wondered if those cherubs were even real.